Hey everybody, so this video is about decimal conversions, and what that means is switching between decimals towards fractions and fractions towards decimals. So the first thing we want to do is quickly look at fractions to decimals. So let's say you had something like this. It's okay if the top number is not bigger than the smaller number. You still do the same machine. You drop the top number under there. 4 goes into 3 0 times. No big deal. Why? Because we put extra zeros on the back. 4 goes into 3 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract 3. Bring down. 4 goes into 30. Obviously, you can see how this is turning out. 2, 4 goes into 25 times. There's our decimal. 0.75. So what I'm saying here is that this fraction to decimal is something you've already done. It's the very first beginning of our decimal kinds of questions. You take a fraction and you stick the top number underneath, and then you just run your system. That's all there's to it. That is fraction to decimal. Pretty easy. Now, the decimal to fraction is pretty much just as easy. Let's take the same number, 0.75. Well, we know it has to be 3 over 4, but how do we get there? The first big step is that you recognize that every number in the universe can be written over top of 1. Every number in the universe can be written over top of 1. 0.75 divided by 1. Why? Because anytime you divide by 1, it equals whatever you started with. So there's no change in value. Now that we're here, we can think to ourselves, hey, that's the same as 0.75 over top of 1.00. That's really what we're dealing with. And that would be 0.75. And now that we have this, we have exactly what we had in the last video. We have a fraction with decimals in it. And we have to ask, how do we get rid of these decimals? In this case, there's two bounces I need to do to the right. So if I had the decimal there, we could ignore it. If the decimal was there, we could ignore it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to imagine this is my start. And now I'm going to show my multiplication. Now to bounce it 2 times, I have to go times 100. 2 zeros on 100. So that'll get it moving twice. Now 100 over 100 equals the number 1. So really, I'm not changing the value of this because I'm timesing it by 1. So there's my start, there's my multiplication, and now I'm going to show my bounce. This is where your teacher finds out if you know what you're talking about. 0, 7, 5, 1, 0, 0. I left a lot of space so that I could show the bounces. It used to be there, 1 bounce, 2 bounce, arrow, tip, dot. It used to be there, 1 bounce, 2 bounce, arrow, tip, dot. Okay, so we've shown our bounces. Maybe an equal sign would be good, and an equal sign. And now we're going to show the cleaned up version. So 075 dot is the same as saying 75. 100 dot is the same as saying 100. And now that you're here, you simplify. That's all you got to do. So coming down here, 75, if you do a factor tree, that's 25 times 3. That's 5 times 5. There's our factors. Circle your prime numbers. 100 is 10 times 10. Sorry that it's so small. 2 times 5, 2 times 5. Now, it's intuitive for a person to come back here and look at that, right? It's intuitive to come back over here because that's what we read, left to right, okay? The arrows will help. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm going from here down to here. So show an arrow if your work looks like this in your notebook. And then what do we have here? I'm just making a separator here. So 75 over 100 equals 3 times 5 times 5. And that's 2 times 5 times 2 times 5. And we cancel out what we can cancel out. The 5s kill the 5s. The 5 kills the 5. What are we left with? A 3 on the top and a 2 times 2 on the bottom, which is a 4. So we can see that we can go from a decimal to a fraction by, first of all, putting it over the number 1, and then recognizing what that number 1 really is. It's 1.00, and then asking ourselves, how many times do we need to bounce that decimal, which takes us exactly to the previous type of question, where you start with something, you do a multiplier, you show your balance, you clean it up, and then you simplify. Just like that.